What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. Here we are again, Yannick. We're going to be tackling the future of on-chain aviation, the aviation industry with Kepler Digitals. Super excited to have Yannick, who's the CEO of Kepler Digitals, with us. Francois, recently onboarded CTO, and Yolene, who is tackling kind of supply chain and aerospace. So that being said, always love the opportunity to talk to new guests. So Yolene, can you maybe give us a little bit of an intro of yourself and tell us a little bit about your background? That'd be great.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So my name is Yolene Sabadi. I'm based in Toulouse in France. As a background, I'm an aerospace engineer. I did an engineering school in France and then spent all my professional life working in aerospace, mainly in Airbus, doing some technical stuff first, mainly on engines, on flight tests, then doing some configuration management on the cabin of the A380, and then delivering aircraft at the delivery center. And then I moved to procurement when I spent the rest of my life, I would say. So first in Airbus, working on engines and nacelle for big aircraft. And then I decided to move to a startup called Universal Hydrogen, whose project was to retrofit aircraft into hydrogen aircraft for being zero emission. And in procurement as well, I was the director of procurement and strategic supply chain.
Awesome. Thank you. And Francois, if you could maybe give us a background of yourself, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So I am François Chiron. I live in Versailles, next to the French Silicon Valley. I have graduated from Polytechnique, where I met Julien Dercy, another Kepler fellow. Then I graduated from Supélec, where I met Benoît Maisseux. I worked on AI at this time. We didn't call it AI at that time. We call it signal processing, but it was kind of the same. And then I followed by a thesis at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Then I started to work in the IT for my whole career. With a little fun fact, because in 1998, when I worked in the telecom industry, I worked on an algorithm of cryptography that was using blocks of data that was going one after the other. And it was actually blockchain, but nobody called it blockchain. I was like, it's very boring as an algorithm. But and I ended up working for the bank industry until 2013, where I jumped into the payment. I did some innovation things, and then I bumped into blockchain, and I was kind of enthusiastic about the technology. And then I worked with Benoît Maisseux, who was working on electric vehicle cars. And he told me, there are very interesting things to do with blockchain. So we jumped into this area. And a few months ago, Julien Dercy told me, there are very interesting business cases to do in the aviation. And so I jumped into that as well. And it's very exciting to be in that space.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned that, terminology like calling AI. It's always funny because like in crypto, there's always so many new terminologies kind of referencing back to things that have been around for decades, especially like we talk about like AI and electric vehicles and aviation, certainly like the DPIN stuff. But Yannick, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about the two new team members of Kepler. You guys have built out quite the powerhouse throughout this year. But just in particular, these two and what value you see them kind of bringing into the ecosystem, that'd be great.
Huge value. So that's why they are here. Actually, this is a pleasure for me to welcome them. So Francois and Yolene to the team. Actually strengthen the team even better. You know the rest of the team, and so you met or we interviewed some of them already. But with Yolene and Francois, actually we are covering some pieces where we were kind of weak. And so step by step, we are making really a dream team, and this is I'm so happy. So actually, you heard me talking about the supply chain. So the fact to be able to cover, to fight counterfeiting in all the aviation parts and everything which is about the subsidiary of the subsidiary of the subsidiary that at some point could create an issue into what you mount on an aircraft. And it's my pleasure to welcome Yolène, because she's coming from these cases, and she has been, I wouldn't say confronted, but she definitely realized that there is something to do to make sure that we are safer and safer into that. So she embraced the challenge recently, and Yolène will explain what she already did in the past few weeks, and she's super quick in making appointments for the team. So very happy to have her. And Airbus is a big name, as you know. So Toulouse is also a big city. This is the nest of Concorde. The Airbus 380, all that were created and flew for the first time over there. So she has been seeing that all her life, I'd say. So this is one thing, and then on the technical side, we need to reinforce our capacity to develop on blockchain, because we have so many use cases coming up. We need to have senior people being able to address all these challenges. So we are counting on we're synergizing with the Galileo protocol research and development team. But victims of our success into getting into this space, we need to reinforce. So François is giving that background. So he has been for a long time into the blockchain space, and already is discussing with the team how to reinforce our capacity to develop, where to locate all these people to make sure that we are strong for the foreseeable future in that. So it's a pleasure to have these two senior advisors as part of the team.
Well, I know, Yannick, you mentioned some of the work that Yolène has been doing over the past few weeks. And I guess one of the questions that I would have is kind of coming from supply chain and aviation and aerospace industry, Yolène, what was kind of the appeal for coming into Kepler? Where do you kind of see some of the opportunities for, I know Yannick mentions counterfeit issues. Just maybe give us kind of your overview as far as the state of the industry that you come from and the opportunity that you potentially see.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's very exciting, and for me, it's brand new. I don't know that many things about blockchain and crypto money, but I think it's very, very important, and it can achieve safety. Safety, you know, in aviation is key. It's really crucial, and it has to become more and more safe as there are more and more passengers every year flying aircraft. So at the same time, aviation is becoming green. It has to remain safe, and blockchain is, for me, really the best tool to achieve that. We can see that. My own point of view is that digitalization first is not at the right pace in aviation, so we need to accelerate that. And blockchain is also the mean really to as Yannick was mentioning, avoid counterfeiting of parts, which is becoming a real issue. So if we can do the both things at the same time and really lock everything, all the parts from production, maybe production is safe at the beginning because you have the parts, they are brand new, etc. They are coming and you are building your aircraft, it's okay. But then the aircraft is flying, is spending many years flying, you have to change parts, to repair, and then maybe it can happen that counterfeiting is coming. And in production as well, you can encounter that. We've seen already some cases in which it happens. So really, blockchain is the solution to ensure that the safety is there, the traceability of the part, and when you've locked it with a kind of certificate of what we call PNFT, when you've locked it, it's forever, and you can follow this part for its whole life, and it will it will really reinforce the security and the safety in aviation. And for me, it's really the right solution to avoid this counterfeiting becoming again important in this world, and we should really avoid that for the benefit of the passengers.
One thing I think is interesting, Yannick, is that I keep getting a little bit of echo. You have kind of gotten together a team that has a lot of kind of tentacles out there in the traditional industry, which I think is interesting. And I think you allude to that with maybe some of the connections that Yulen has been making over the past few weeks. I don't know which of those connections we can talk about, or if we can talk about that stuff. But Yulen, if you can maybe share a little bit of the work that you've done over the past few weeks, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, sure. So I cannot give you names for the moment. Unfortunately, it's too premature. But as I was saying, for me, there are two different worlds: the production one and the MRO, the repair one. Once the aircraft is flying, and we've now prospect in both worlds. So we are currently building partnership and collaboration with different companies. Some small ones and some big ones, and the idea is to start the first demonstrators with some parts, and really to understand what are the real needs and how we can improve that. For some companies, they are still working with paper. So as I was mentioning, it will be a double effect because we will have digitalization and safety and traceability through the blockchain at once. So it will be a very big step. So yeah, hopefully beginning of next year, we will be able to give more details and maybe some names.
Awesome. Francois, I want to ask, I mean, you've obviously been in the blockchain space for a while. And I know that you kind of have experience in other areas of transportation. So from like the electric vehicle standpoint, same question to you, I guess, and kind of the draw into Kepler and aviation. And, do you see kind of synergy with some of the use cases that would be in the electric vehicle standpoint compared to aviation? I would imagine that counterfeiting is probably potentially an issue. And certainly kind of we've been talking about green aviation for a while with Kepler, and electric vehicles are literally green. Just your thoughts, Francois, would be great.
Yeah, the aviation industry is like, I come from the bank industry, and they're kind of very secure industry. They don't want to change the rules because they're kind of not only afraid, but challenged by new technologies. So they go very slowly in adopting the new trends. So like they prefer to keep on paper, as Yulen said, rather than go digitalized. And so they're very much the best place to introduce a new technology that makes sense and that gives really good value that the others cannot do themselves, because they have too much legacy. So it's very hard in the bank industry, in the aviation, and also in the automotive. And that's what we see in the electric vehicles. We saw all the major OEMs that are traditionally building cars. They didn't want to jump the new revolution. And so Xiaomi is building cars. They're supposed to make phones, and they said, well, we can do cars as well. So this new technology is very hard for them to introduce. And so we have a synergy in all these new domains, and blockchain for tracking real world asset, or making certificates for the device, and allowing machine-to-machine communication and machine-to-machine payments. It is something that we really put on the table, and there are some. The space is huge, and there are many different use cases that fit perfectly with blockchain.
Yeah, I want to expand upon that just a little bit, because you have kind of an interesting background. We're coming from the banking industry and payments, and then kind of delving out into blockchain. you know, it's interesting. Like I've done so many of these interviews, and it seems like a good portion of the real world adoption that's going to happen as these traditional enterprises, banks, you know, manufacturers, whatever, integrate the technology. A lot of the use cases might not be sexy, but they are like 100% the use cases that are going to get us to like mainstream adoption. And I guess the question that I have is like, when you go into discussions with people to adopt the technology, do you you know, obviously part of your role within Kepler is a technology part, but do you feel like it's like important to abstract away like the buzzwords around crypto? You know what I mean? Like to not have to say NFT or to not have to say literally the word crypto in general. Just broad thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, you know, when we're talking about crypto in 2020 or 21, it was completely different from today. Today, when we say crypto, well, first we used to say Web3 because crypto is kind of scary for most people. Now they're not scared, they're interested because they understand Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is really a small part of the ecosystem. It's just cryptocurrency. You have every year you have a new advance in technology. Maybe like 3 years ago we didn't talk about layer 2. It was not the major topic. Now I think the most important thing is multi-chain. This is really the main focus, how we can adopt the different ecosystems and be the best in every part. We have, of course, NFTs. And so when we talk about NFTs, people think about apes and things like that. But no, it's also concert tickets that are getting on NFTs. You have certificates of authenticity for luxury goods, so that you have a series of objects and you get enrolled into a club of owners, like cars or even bottle of wine, because I'm from next to Bordeaux and they made NFTs for a bottle of wine. Anything that can link the company with the owner and make the ecosystem, that's NFTs, for instance. It's, you know, real world asset, PNFTs, digital identity, verifiable credentials. It is things that showed up, and we don't have the business case completely in the main world. But people are going to get this technology and say, hey, why don't we track logistics with NFTs? It makes very much sense. Instead of having private systems that are closed. And then for digital identity, why don't we put a digital identity in the car or in the eVTOL, so that when he does some interaction with the world, we can know who it is and we can track and get very precise information about the object. But it takes time, and that's why the startups are here to go faster than the big players.
100%. Yannick, I'm curious, similar question to you as far as the experience that you've had so far, kind of with the outreach and networking efforts on your end. And it is interesting. I keep going back to the onboarding of, like, you know, we've done so many of these spaces and it ends up being so crypto centric. And as Francois, you mentioned how important it is to kind of take kind of that multi-chain approach. And I'm always so fascinated that we, like, even outside of that, crypto is a very, like, this network against this network against this network, and we're competing for recycled liquidity between networks. And, like, there's 95 to 98% of the mass populace that just isn't here yet. And I think it's interesting, Yannick, when throughout the course of these interviews we've done with you guys, is that you guys are, like, beginning to bring on people that just aren't in crypto yet, which I think is just massively important for adoption. But what has the networking kind of been like for you as far as educating people on the potential impact here?
Yeah, this is very funny, because I have one leg on the crypto world, in the blockchain world, and one leg in the real world, let's say real world asset world. And I see how difficult this is for some people to get from one to the other one. What I can say what I can say is that so far, when we raised the ICO at the end, 40% of the people were new, absolutely new to the Web 3.0 world. Then after now, we continue to have post ICO, post listing, which happened on the 12th of November, a big amount of newcomers to the blockchain world, so the crypto world. So basically, they ask me, how can I get into that world? So a lot of my time is spent into educating them to get into that world. So therefore, they get with their fiat money and they invest. They want to contribute to what we do. So this is super, let's say, rewarding for me to observe that. It shows that first of all there is an interest, and this is not. They could have other easiest places to invest and to help, but they want to really to help Kepler Digital to make the use cases a reality. So for me, this is now I'd say 50% even more. They are newcomers, completely newcomers. For the first time ever, they get into blockchain, whatever age they have. Huh? So I'm educating people who are 25 years old. They should know better than me what blockchain is about. Or people who are 65, 67 years old, they get into that. So this is quite a nice adventure. I like to bounce on what Yolène and François said on two things. The supply chain we talked about. It's a strong case that Yolène has undertaken. And actually, each of the advisors that are coming on board, they are going to focus on the use cases that we develop in the white paper. So here we talk about the supply chain, but the supply chain doesn't stop at the new parts. You need to. I am an aircraft engineer. I work for Air France in the maintenance department of Air France, and you have some aircraft which are carbonized, and they serve as a storage of parts to be mounted on another aircraft. So you've got can we say a second-hand industry or circulating industry that you observe today in luxury. So imagine the opportunities to have wrong parts as part of this circulating. I consider, and this is a stat that I did myself by my experience in that domain. When an aircraft is getting out of the factory new, 20 years after, 20% of the aircraft have been changed. So the parts are not the same. The engine will have been changed because one of them had to be removed. The flaps will have been changed, or any type of parts will have been changed. So imagine the dilemma or the nightmare to trace all that in the future with the number of aircraft exploding. So really, we need to do that right from the beginning. So this is for the supply chain. It's not only for new parts, it's also for the recycling that is going to come in the next years. On the processes that François was mentioning, actually one of the use cases, and that we have already started with one partner, you need to take care of the turnaround management of an aircraft on an airport. So what is this? You have to make things in the right order at the right moment with all the guarantees that then needs to be showed to the captain to push back and to start engines. All that today is very manual. So therefore, the processes themselves for turnaround management is a super big use case for blockchainization as well, to make sure that this is. So you can have a guideline which is issued by IATA in the aircraft handling manuals, and then after you can see how you derive or not from these guidelines. So this is something which actually we have already a pioneer that I'm talking to. More news in January, and this is in a corner of aviation that we call ground handling. So these people who are taking care of aircraft when they are on an airport, so they need to make sure that what they do, their process is actually certified and traceable. So this is a second thing of, if you want, it's not a part in itself, it's a process to tokenize.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting. I want to go back to the kind of the warehouse of recycled parts, because I didn't know about that, and it sparks a lot of interesting questions for me where like I would imagine, and you and Yolen or Yannick maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that if something goes wrong, there's normally like a root cause analysis to determine what it was that went wrong. And imagine having just these recycled spare parts that go into stuff, and the root cause analysis determines that this part that was in this batch of stuff in a giant warehouse was the cause of what went wrong. And then trying to track down, hey, is this part in a bunch of other airplanes that are kind of out there? Or, I mean, that gets to be pretty scary that's like the state of things right now. And then you're depending on all sorts of intangibles like warehouse workers to make sure that stuff's stored correctly. It just gets wild. Like, am I correct in those assumptions that it's a nightmare if that were to happen?
Yolen, you may want to answer. I can answer as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, don't be scared, Solomon. It's working yet, but we can secure it far more than that. So yeah, it can happen for sure. So you are mentioning a different thing. I believe that Yannick was mentioning. You have on the aircraft, you have what we call life limited parts. So some parts that will not go for the life of the aircraft itself. So we all know that they have to be replaced at a point of time. So this is normal and replaced by new ones. And you have also some incurrence of some issues. So it can be either, well, the aircraft incurred an issue and you have to troubleshoot and find the solution, or non-quality, or because the part in production was wrong, and then you need to replace it. So there's many occurrences, and it's well followed for sure. There are strong processes in aviation. Everything is already well secured, but with blockchain you can improve the traceability and the safety again. So this is very interesting, and you also I think in terms of traceability of the parts, it's where it can bring really a lot of value again in all this process. And well, we're talking about parts since the beginning, but the processes as well, which are behind, can be also improved because when you are looking everything in blockchain, you have the full history. It's like an open book, which is there for forever, I would say. And visible, well, you can choose the confidentiality, of course, but visible by the people you have chosen. And it's very, very interesting, again, to improve the traceability and to secure and to lock the processes for the life of the aircraft. So, okay, production, yes, it's an important part, but the life of the aircraft, which will continue to fly for many years, and for the safety of the passengers at the end.
Francois, I want to ask. God, I'm echoing again. Francois, I wanted to ask you though, just your thoughts on, because you kind of probably have an interesting take on this, and I feel like we're kind of in this spot in innovation where it's a bunch of different things like about to converge together. So obviously we have blockchain and distributed ledger. You know, you can think of the ways that artificial intelligence would play in. You can think of, like you mentioned earlier, digital identity, which isn't just you and I. It's going to be tokenized real world assets need an identity. PNFTs, with what you guys are doing, certainly need an identity. I mean, everything basically needs an identity that you can track and trace. Otherwise, what's the point of bringing it on chain? Even like the zero knowledge stuff, everything else. Like, where do you think we're at kind of in this adoption timeline? I mean, we've been talking about kind of, I guess, supply chain for an example, but where do you think we're at as far as getting to that almost like blockchain stamp of approval for all these processes along the journey of the supply chain, Francois? Like, do you think we have a long time to go for the convergence of all this tech? It's really exciting because like it's kind of up. It's like anybody's guess kind of when this stuff really shakes out. But do you believe? I mean, do you kind of agree that there's just so much kind of converging at one time?
Yeah. Well, from my personal point of view, I can just mention that I was also doing, as I said, I was doing AI, which were called random forest or signal processing or statistical. There was no neural network in 1996, 1998, Georgia Tech, for instance. And once the technology is here and nobody does anything with it, and then some guy like in Google, they say, hey, maybe we can switch the configuration of the neural network, and then the LLM showed up, and now it's a big revolution and everybody uses everywhere. Kind of same for blockchain. It was like Bitcoin. So okay, it's interesting, peer-to-peer transaction, no intermediate, etc. And then Ethereum showed up and said, maybe we could do a step further and do some smart contracts. And people didn't realize at the moment that it was a real revolution. It was completely different game, that you could have computer things on top of it. And then today we're talking about secure computation, where inside the blockchain you can have some nodes that have artificial intelligence network algorithms. And so you can ask to have a certain process made, and the guy who processed the data doesn't know the data, and nobody knows which data you gave and which data you collected, in complete confidentiality. And so those are the things that are on the table. Today, you don't have the business cases because it takes time to make the trust and to develop the technology. But we are kind of at the rupture, and then we just have the things here. It's not rocket science. I don't have to invent anything. I can take things that already exist to make something work. And so what we see in the news is that it goes very fast, like Elon Musk with its rockets, or with the full self-driving almost here, even though I'm a bit cautious about that. Don't put me on that road. But it's amazing how fast it goes, and so it should go very fast in many other directions. So that's why we will prove with Kepler Digitals that there are some other roads that can go very fast with adopting the new technologies, like logistics and proof of improving many processes in the aviation and around the airports.
I wanted to ask, because you mentioned this earlier, and maybe everybody up here can touch on this, but with the electric vehicle manufacturing and some of the stuff you've done with WearNode and everything else, you mentioned that there was a mobile carrier that just realized that the electric vehicle industry traditionally there wasn't a lot of companies willing to innovate, so they just said, well, we're just going to do it. So I guess the question that I kind of have is, from the aviation standpoint, what is your thought for the traditional aviation incumbents and companies out there that aren't willing to innovate compared to the ones that are? And do you think that there's maybe potentially trouble for that business model if they just decide to keep doing business as usual? I'll start with maybe Yannick.
Yeah, well, so I have a clear view on this. There, and there. So if you don't disrupt yourself, somebody will disrupt you. So they will have to move. They will have to change, because some new entrants will do it. So therefore, the people who will decide to stay on the ground because this is a big cash cow, they will lose ground. And this is why in the telephony, some people who were leading, then all of a sudden they became obsolete. And you see that all the time. So disrupt yourself. You need to cannibalize yourself all the time. Reinvent yourself. So take risk and reinvent. And this is my motto. It has always been my motto in my life. So I think they will have to, because the industry is going that way. Because as we said, if you want the big trends of aviation is doubling number of passengers in 20 years. So doubling the number of aircraft, adding new aircraft, new propulsion means, and all that with the old methodology, it will not work. People will have to reinvent themselves. If not, they will be disrupted by others, by innovators. This is why we are doing this. Yeah. So it's you cannot stay still. So in life, you can just not stay, okay, so I'm going to be like this for the next 10 years. No, it will not work. So what we are going to prove is that with the innovators, they will come. The people who today are not the leaders on the market will become the leaders by adopting these new technologies. So I'm absolutely convinced about that.
It's almost like there's like this, well, I'm curious, Francois, your take, and maybe just everybody's that has any thoughts on this too, but I've been in this space for a while, and I would say like the past 12 to 18 months, we've seen like more real world adoption from like traditional finance, enterprise, whatever, where they're not just in like the proof of concept game. There's actual real world deployments of things.
Yeah.
It's almost like everybody or nobody wants to be first, but everybody wants to be second type thing. And maybe just broader takes on the industry, Yannick, and then we'll kind of get into maybe some updates from Kepler and some milestones and things like that. But I'll start with you, Francois, kind of your broader take on blockchain adoption and what we've kind of seen over the past year or so.
Yeah, the thing is, we have digitalization. So every company within the 21st century needs to improve its process and digitalize its customer relation, its process and everything. So they can be very slow, but there are some external revolution that will force them to move very fast or to die. For instance, the cars, they have been forced to move because the electric vehicle has arrived, but you needed to change it to a very software-oriented product and not a hardware-oriented product. And they were too slow. And Tesla, for instance, is a software company. It's not a hardware company. And there are some in the aviation today, they have not been forced from the outside. I mean, marginally, because there are the eVTOLs and new areas, but it's a small portion. I think within the next or maybe 15 years, or I don't know how fast it's going to go, but there will be completely different landscape because the technology will have changed. And so blockchain is one step into the digitalization. It's not a revolution that goes out of nowhere. It's something that already exists. People have a QR code. They have computers. They all have all that. It's just a step further compared to the cloud. For instance, I'm not going to go into my general consideration between the different steps of a computer evolutions with the on-premise and then the cloud and then blockchain. Let's put the blockchain as a super cloud. And so, yeah, it's going to be the next step for any company, actually.
Yeah. Yannick, I know Galileo just had somewhat of a milestone too with the collaboration with Porsche, and that was really cool to see. I know we're going to be talking to Pierre about that on Wednesday, but it's just one more example of like, these kind of powerhouse names coming in and starting to test out things within the crypto landscape. And I'm curious, just your takes, Yannick, on kind of some of the stuff that we've seen from like the adoption standpoint of blockchain over the past like year or so.
Yeah, well, so as I was mentioning in the previous interview, so a lot of people have made white papers about blockchain. So it's something that big tech company have in aviation. They have envisaged, but they never did it because it was to replace what works well today. So here, Kepler Digital, we don't have this burden of making sure that we continue the business that we are doing before. So basically, we can go from scratch from the beginning. So here we have a lot of support of innovators, I'd say, in all the segments that are written in the white paper. So the supply chain, we mentioned that with Yolen. We meet big names at the beginning of January, so we'll disclose them as soon as we can. But they are quite interesting to say. I would my lips are burning to say who they are, but we will see that maybe end of Jan or mid-Jan, we will see with them. But you've got also people who want to leapfrog. So there have been example in the, let's take the ground on link segment. There is a huge competition between the big names, the Swiss Sport, the Avia Partners, the World Flight Services, all these one. So they are super big names, and you've got some smaller ones who want to become the first ones. So they want to leapfrog, and I am approached by, let's say, second link guys, and they say, okay, but I want to be the first one adopting blockchain in my processes. So I'm discussing with them, and then after, once they can show the airlines that they are better because they can trace what they do, the process is safer. So most probably they will win contracts, because the airline will say, this one, he knows what he's talking about. When he tells me this aircraft is ready to go with all the milestones being achieved at the right time, this is for true, because I can see that on blockchain. Versus the big names say, okay, please look at my paper. No, so you see, it's a way also for some people to leapfrog. And we give them the opportunity to do that. So this is one, and there is also something which is burning my lips, is that the discussion that I'm having in the United Arab Emirates. So if at the end of Jan we have something to say here, we are talking about the whole all use cases, the whole white paper. It's not big enough, because they are inventing some other things on top of that we can also do on blockchain. So let's see for that. So basically, it's real name. I'm not looking for customers at the moment. Let's say, yes, I am looking for customers, but for adopters. But at the same time, in each of the verticals that we develop, there are clear names that are interested in trying at least, and most probably after trying, adopting it during 2025. So this is like a theory becoming true. You know that we are developing already an MVP in the drone area. I discussed with the CEO of Dragonfly Pad this morning. So this is going on. We are developing that. There is another one with MB Aviation for the training, so the training certificates. So the same, the schools who are going to issue blockchainized training certificates are going to be ahead of the crowd versus this very competitive market, which is about training people at airport. So this is also an MVP ongoing, being built. So these one are real cases. So all that to say that now with Francois, we need to put in order what we develop first, because it's a good luxury to have so many cases to develop than looking for cases. So I'm happy so far, and the team is just wonderful. So when you look at this, most probably I will announce 2 new advisors for two verticals in the coming 3 weeks, right after holiday break, and they are also going to cover some of the vertical we develop in the white paper. Yeah. So far so good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to give everybody the opportunity to kind of give any kind of forward-looking statements, what you're excited about for your roles within Kepler, what you're excited about kind of for the future of innovation in the blockchain industry. And Yolene, maybe I'll start with you for this one as we kind of ramp down here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Solomon. Yeah, I'm very excited to be part of this very talented team. And also what is exciting me is to make the link between those two universes that are very, very different. And aviation maybe sometimes is quite slow to make some moves, and it's not easy to make some disruption because you have very well organized processes and it's a lot of strong rules. But still, I fully agree with Yannick. We need to make this step for the future, and it's really important. So that's why I'm here, and it's very exciting to be part of this great adventure.
Awesome, Francois. Same question to you as far as what you're excited about with your role within Kepler for the future of this industry as well, and any other forward-looking statements you might have.
Yeah, I'm really forward looking to having a real-world assets and real-world deployment. And also the very paradoxical situation is we're going to build a product that is going to be better, and not because it will be branded blockchain, but we will have something better without having the blockchain cling, the blockchain fancy word. And then in the background, we'll say, hey, but it's powered by blockchain, and that's why it's more powerful. And so that's the challenge that I take, and I'm pretty sure we will be one of the best in this area. And we will also make the follow-up of all our different projects are followed by the token Avia that is going to follow the team as a whole. And I hope I will come very soon to showcase some things in another podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, we look forward to it for sure. And then Yannick, any forward-looking statements, what you're excited about? I think you kind of dropped a couple of those things here for what's coming in January, but anything that we might have missed?
No, I'd say, well, so I'm super positive about the future. I believe in it. I'm sure that you can perceive that in my passionate way of saying things. So I do believe that it will work. So you all know that we listed Avia in the 12th of November. So it's going well. People are adopting it. So it is the right season of the altcoin coming up, and before even all that started, we had a very big increase of the value of the Avia, but it's not the end. So this is maybe something funny, and you've seen some videos about this. Now I'm joined by professional footballers as investors. They just heard about this. And they come to say, okay, so I believe in what you do. We take the flight every other day, so I want to contribute. So they contribute, and when these ones they contribute big time, I can tell you. Yeah. So this is maybe the little story next to that. Nothing to do with aviation, but at least it's worth mentioning that this type of community are behind us now, and more, actually.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to wish everybody here a happy holiday. I know maybe I should have kicked that off with that. This is probably maybe nearing the last week for everybody here. And Francois, super excited to have you on today for the kind of the first interview. Yolene, same thing with you. And then Yannick, always a pleasure. And looking forward to seeing who the new couple of advisors are, probably doing some sort of interview around that. Looking forward to some of the stuff hopefully being able to be maybe shared with the work going on or the discussions going on surrounding the UAE. Yeah, and that being said, hang out with me for a second, guys, as I ramp this down and make sure I get the recordings. So do not hop, and thank you guys very much.